Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be doing this mushroom painting. Also, we have a sponsor for today's videos, Phoenix Art Supply. Woohoo! I'm sorry, I always get excited when someone pay me to do more of these tutorial videos. So thank you Phoenix Art Supply. They sent me these really nice sturdy canvases and I'll be using them in today's painting tutorial. And honestly, I'm kind of liking them a lot already. These are 100% cotton canvases. That means they should be able to hold water very well while keeping the nice surface texture. They're also back stable with uncut corners and a pretty generous selvage, which is super helpful if you ever want to re-stretch your canvas in the future. The canvas wrapped completely around the stretcher bars, so there's no visible branding on the back, so that's also a big plus if you're selling your artwork. Also, I really like how much tidier the back stable canvas look. Like I generally leave the sides unpainted, so it's just kind of cleaner, more polished that way when the stables are in the back. The wood frames feel pretty solid and sturdy. I mean, so far I don't feel any flexing or sagging here. Should be pretty good in terms of load bearing. I received two types of canvas, the traditional series and the gallery series. You can see here that the traditional series is thinner compared to the gallery series. They both have the same cotton paper and they are both back stables, so it really depends on what size you would like to use. Personally, for hanging on the wall, I think I prefer the thick gallery series, but for just putting on a table somewhere for display, then I think the thinner traditional series work better. So yeah, big thanks to Phoenix Art Supply for supporting this video. I'll leave a link below in the description if you want to check them out. Now let's dive into today's tutorial and actually put this canvas to the test. I'll be using gouache today and I'll just be using this round brush. I'm going to start out with mixing a pretty light yellow color, so some white with lemon or primary yellow. And I'm going in trying to kind of just map out the general big shape of the head of the mushroom here. So we have a big one up top, a kind of medium one down on the right hand side, and a smaller one down below. Trying to have them at slightly different angle, so the top one and the bottom one you see a little bit more of the bottom side of it, whereas the middle medium one you mostly only see the top of it, just to make them slightly different. One thing to note is when we're filling out the colors for these mushrooms, you don't want to use just up and down stroke like this, like a cross. You want to kind of follow the round shape of the mushroom. Right now it's just yellow, so a little bit hard to see, but when we get a little bit more color, it'll be more obvious when you add your brush stroke and how it would look like. So for example, right here, I'm add a little bit more red to make an orange color. And when I'm filling out this orange color, I'm trying to make my brush really kind of curvy, following the curvature of the mushroom, giving it that three-dimensional look instead of just using my brush up and down. And we're gonna slowly adding more warmer and a little bit more saturated color to this mushroom. I'm adding more cadmium red here to get a darker orange, and I'm gonna go in adding this mostly at the bottom part, but also blending it in with some of the yellow up top. When we do this while the paint is still wet, you will get some of these soft edges. The color will blend in with each other more, which is a plus if we want to have some of these kind of blurry strokes. But later on, when we want to have a little bit more of a hard edge, more defined standalone stroke, then we have to wait for this paint to dry first. But as of right now, I like blending them in, which is nice because our canvas is 100% cotton, so it stays wet for a relatively long time that I can go back in and just keep adding more stroke without worrying about some really hard edges showing up. So now I'm adding a little bit more yellow and just kind of using slightly smaller strokes, just as a couple little round shape around the middle part of this mushroom, trying to blend in the dark color with the light color, making the transition a little bit smoother. Adding more red here. You can use cadmium red or primary red, it really doesn't matter. All we want is to have a little bit more saturated and darker, warmer colors. And I'm kind of adding this mostly at the bottom of the mushroom, going around the edges of it a little bit. And again, just try to keep following the curvature of this mushroom. So don't add straight up and down strokes. You want your stroke to be a little bit curvy, more curve on the side and a little bit less in the middle part. I'm gonna add a little bit more primary red here and a little bit more white to make the orange mixture look slightly more pinkish, some warmer colors. I generally like to have multiple different colors in one area, so I like the look of how just slightly different hues blending in with each other. So I always try to vary my hues and colors a little bit as I go. So here I'm adding this warmer, more pink, mostly at the bottom of the mushroom, but we're also gonna just add a couple strokes, just one or two, kind of blending in with the red up top as well, just to make things look more interesting, more dynamic. For the bottom part of the mushroom, like the underside of the head, I'm going to use a relatively cool tone color. I'm mixing a light blue here. I'm using just white and primary blue, maybe a little bit of phthalo blue. It really doesn't matter what blue color you use, as long as you get kind of like a cool tone color. And the reason why I chose blue mostly is because it's a good contrast with the warm red orangish color up top. So I'm adding this blue, kind of leaving out the stem of the mushroom. We're going to add a little bit more purple there. And after covering the bottom part, I'm also using this blue to covering the area in between this mushroom. We're going to add a lot of grass and foliages in this area. And I don't want to have just the bottom part of the mushroom to be blue. I want everything to kind of have a consistency where everything blend in with each other, so you have a little bit of cool and warm colors throughout the painting. So that's why we're going in here, adding a couple grass strokes, a couple plant strokes, not the whole, we're not covering the whole area, but we're adding a couple grass and plant strokes just around some of this white area where the foliage is going to be. Now I'm adding the blue, making it a little bit darker. You can add some paint gray, black, or even just a darker blue like indigo, which is what I'm doing right now. To make it darker, we add a little bit of variation in terms of values at the bottom part of the mushroom as well, so they don't just look like it's monotone throughout. And then the same thing, we're going down here, adding a couple plants, a couple grass stroke, and I'm gonna keep repeating this process, but just slowly making the blue a little bit darker every time I go. So far, our canvas has been pretty good at holding water and all of these paints. The colors stay pretty vibrant throughout, and I haven't seen a lot of color shifting with the paper. One thing to note is when you paint with canvas, the paper is generally, because it's canvas, is thicker than your usual watercolor paper. So you want to add a little bit more paint at the beginning. So make your mixture slightly thicker and also slightly more saturated in my experience. You don't have to do it like too much saturated, but because the canvas absorb the paints a little bit more, again depending on the type of canvas, but for this one I find that it works better if you make your colors a little bit more saturated and a little bit thicker. And so far the color has been pretty vibrant. I'm happy with the result so far right now. Okay, now for the stem of the mushroom, I'm just adding a little bit of red to this blue mixture we have to make a purple color. And I'm gonna use this purple to add in the stem here. The stem, I like it to have kind of spreading out at the very top, just like this. Think about like a kind of like a skirt or like a dress at that top. And then we're gonna have more of a kind of like a straight shrunk at the bottom here. Doing that for all three mushrooms. So a little bit of a spreading out skirt at the top, and then we have more of a roundish trunk at the bottom. Then just like the blue, I'm also gonna darken this purple a little bit more, and then we're gonna go in adding a little bit of this dark color at the very top of the stem here, and also like right between where that little spreading out skirt looking section ends and the bottom part of the stem start. Set a little bit of, some contrast there, just so we can see the two sections separate very clearly. Now that we added the purple and the blue underneath, I find that the top part of the mushroom looks a little bit too light for me. So I'm going back in with a darker purple pinkish mixture and just kind of blend in some of this darkness at the bottom part of, the top of the mushroom, just so that the transition between light and dark is a little bit more gradual and less abrupt. Okay, then we're just gonna grab some white in our yellow, mix a pretty light yellow here, and using this and to add a couple light part on the right hand side of the mushroom stem, and then adding a little bit more of a light pink, kind of blending that in right here, just so it doesn't look monotone. So there's as if there's some sunlight hitting the right side of the mushroom stem. Let's add a little bit of white to our purple mixture right here and make it slightly warmer. So I'm adding a little bit more red as well. We want a purple, but I just want it to be slightly warmer than what we had previously. And we're going to use this to add a little bit more contrast, a little bit more texture on this mushroom. Just using pretty simple stroke, kind of spreading out stroke at the top part of the stem and just follow the curvature of the stem at the bottom. This help give it more of a three-dimensional shape and also help us define, the top spreading out part versus the bottom part a lot more. Now let's go in with some grass color. So for that, I'm trying to mix a light green mixture here, adding a little bit blue and yellow mixed with white. And just like what we did with our blue colors in the grass previously, I'm going to use this mixture and just kind of go in with some grass stroke, blending in with the blue. Like, don't be afraid to just kind of overlapping them, like going over what we painted before. We want to eventually make the grass look complicated and looks like there's a lot of things going on. So I'm just going in with some random stroke. Sometimes I'm adding a couple thinner grass looking strokes. Sometimes I'm adding a couple leaf plant look-alike stroke that kind of pointing outward from the middle. And I'm going to go in with different colors for the green as well, just like what we did with the blue. So here I'm adding a little bit more yellow, making it slightly warmer, and going in doing the same thing, kind of overlapping these new colors with the old one. As long as we don't cover everything we add previously, then we should be okay. But don't be afraid to overlap what you add previously. So in that case, we want everything to kind of blending in with each other. You don't want to have, a separate blue section and then a separate green section. We want everything to kind of mix with each other. And I'm going to keep doing this for multiple different green color. We're going to make some of the green a little bit warmer by adding more yellow, some of them a little bit cooler by adding more blue, some darker, some lighter. Just essentially trying to get as much variety in this section as we can. Another thing to note is I generally find it better to add all of these little details, blend strokes, or very thin grass alike, kind of around the edges, because you would see them easier against the white background. But for the area in the middle, especially the ones like right next to the mushroom, I generally try to keep my stroke pretty big, because you don't want to have your painting be too overgrounded, like too complicated. We want some small details like these plants and little leaf stroke to be visible and to help make our painting looks more interesting. But if there's little details, all over the place, every single inches of the painting, then you kind of remove the contrast that we trying to intentionally create it with the details in the first place. Okay, now going back in with a little bit of a light purple. It's pretty much similar to the light purple that we use for the mushroom stem, just a little bit more white, slightly lighter. And just add a couple grass stroke with this purple mixture. By doing this, I'm gonna make the stem of the mushroom blend in with the background a little bit more instead of having it standing out like what it is right now. So this is really depending on what your intention is. If you want your mushroom to stand out from the grass, then you wouldn't do this. You want to have generally different colors between the mushroom and different values for them to stand out. But for me, I like to have the mushroom, especially the stem here, to blend in with all the foliage in the background a little bit more. So that's why I'm adding this color. And now we're going back in with a darker green and just doing the same thing, adding a little bit more contrast to our grass area. For the dark green, you can just add a little bit more black to our previous green mixture, or you can use a darker blue, and for me I use indigo, and that is enough to make my green darker without adding any black or pen gray. And going in, adding this dark mixture, especially kind of in the area between the mushrooms and at the bottom, like the feet of these mushrooms. Grabbing a little bit more blue to varies the shades and the hue slightly, so it's not just green, it's a little bit of a cooler blue tone to it, just making things look more interesting. Here I'm mixing a darker purple, so adding a little bit more red to our blue and a little bit of pen gray to darken it, and using this to add more contrast in the stem area. And as we make the color darker here, my stroke gonna be smaller and more intentional. Just use some tiny skinny stroke to create some texture and contrast. Like, don't use this for the whole area of the stem. Okay, now I'm going in with a lighter green, a little bit warmer, by adding some more yellow to my previously green mixture. And again, just going in, adding some more grass here and there, adding a little bit more colors and slightly different hues on some of the plant that I added previously to make them more interesting. And at this point, as I mentioned before, I feel like I already kind of overdid this area by adding too much detail in the middle. If you can, maybe dial back a little bit, especially in the middle part. You can add more of these little plants and grass kind of mostly around the side of the area, but I think I'm overdoing it slightly here. But that's okay. I mean, that's how we improve. We just note what we don't like about the current painting and what we liked, and then we'll do it better in the next one. Alright, now for the dots on the mushroom, I'm just going in with just pure white. So nothing mixing in there, just white and a little bit of water to make it flow. And I'm adding this tiny circle oval shapes on the mushroom. Adding more of them kind of at the top part, so it should be a little bit more sparse toward the bottom and more crowded at the top. And also make sure you vary the size of this. Have some of them bigger, some of them smaller, so they look slightly different. They're not all the same size. And space them out arbitrarily. Like, don't have them too evenly spaced out, because that would make it look weird. And in nature, things are never evenly spaced out. Also, depending on what you're going for your the look of the painting, I'm trying to make it a little bit more of an illustration. So I'm using this white and add a little bit of it around the contour of each of my shape here. So around the mushroom shape, and then later on we're going to do that for the stem as well. That will give it a little bit more of an illustration cartoony look. If you want your mushroom to look a little bit more realistic, I would recommend not adding these like line art around the contour of the mushroom. Also dial back on the saturation a little bit, but for me I like the vibrant illustration style, so that's why I'm doing this. I'm trying to explain my thought process on my decision making of why I do certain things a little bit more. Let me know in the comments if that's helpful in this tutorial, or would that just be a little bit more confusing. I'm adding more cadmium red to the white, and it's mostly red, not a lot of white here. And I'm going to use this vibrant red to add a little bit of a shadow around these white dots that we just added. Just don't go around the whole shape, just kind of like a half circle at the bottom of each of this oval. Also use this and add a couple strokes on the bottom part of the mushroom as well. Just to make it more interesting. I always like having many different colors that are just slightly different from one another. So we had a little bit of a darker purple, reddish before. So I'm adding some more of this saturated pinkish red next to it, just to make things look more interesting. We're doing the same thing for the other two mushrooms. And finally, we're gonna mix a light pinkish color, adding a couple strokes at the top of the mushroom, again just to make it looks more colorful. And also using this, adding a little bit of it on the stem as well, just to kind of tie in with the top part, making it a little bit warmer. Don't add too much though. You still want the main color to be purple. You just want like a couple, 1 or 2 strokes of pink here and there, like this. And that's our painting. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the tutorial. If you liked the video, subscribe, leave me a like and comment. It really helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.